if you were going to write the history of, like, a revolution that completely changed the trajectory of the entire world, you would probably focus your narrative on sweeping armies or brilliant generals.
Right, yeah, political treaties, violent uprisings, things like that.
Exactly. You almost certainly wouldn't focus your story on um, a jar of perfume
Hmm.
or a pitcher of water or, a loaf of bread, a kiss on the cheek, and a sword.
No, it sounds entirely too domestic to be earth-shattering.
Yeah, it really does. But today, we are looking at an ancient text where those exact, incredibly ordinary objects suddenly carry the weight of the universe.
It's a striking subversion of how we expect power to operate, honestly. Because when we look closely at these sources, we find a narrative that deliberately ignores the grand political maneuvers happening in the background.
Right.
And instead, it focuses on incredibly intimate human moments that ultimately decide the fate of this movement.
And that intimacy is our mission for today's deep dives into Mark chapter 14, specifically the first 52 verses. The theme we are exploring across these sources is profound and, honestly, deeply humbling.
Very humbling.
It's framed as a story about the faithful Lord and the failing disciples.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to use this historical text almost like a mirror today.
I like that.
Yeah, examining how it highlights profound, messy human weakness and contrast that with a singular, unwavering divine faithfulness.
And to grasp the intensity of that contrast, we really have to immerse ourselves in the environment of first century Jerusalem.
Right, let's set the stage historically.
So it is the week of Passover. Jerusalem is normally a relatively modest city, but during this festival, it is absolutely bursting at the
Wow,
seams.
it's packed.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Historians estimate you have upwards of 2 million Jewish pilgrims gathered from all over the known world.
2 million. Yeah, and they're there to remember the Exodus, the historic moment God freed their ancestors from slavery in Egypt. So you have massive crowds, intense religious fervor, and a heavy occupying force of Roman soldiers watching their every move from the fortress overlooking the temple.
Right.
The atmosphere is just an electric powder keg.
A powder keg of 2 million people celebrating liberation from oppression while, ironically, currently living under Roman oppression.
Exactly.
And right in the middle of this is Jesus of Nazareth, who has just arrived to massive crowds basically declaring him a king.
Yeah.
So if you are the religious authorities trying to maintain peace with Rome, that has to be your absolute worst nightmare.
It is their absolute worst nightmare. I mean, the chief priests and scribes are desperate to arrest him and shut this down.
Right, but they can't just grab him.
No, they face a massive logistical and political problem. Jesus is incredibly popular with these festival crowds.
Yeah.
If they send armed guards to arrest him in broad daylight in the middle of a festival dedicated to overthrowing tyrants,
That's going to cause a riot.
a massive bloody riot, and the Romans would intervene with extreme prejudice, and the religious leaders would lose what little power they have.
So if a public arrest is off the table because it triggers a riot, how on earth do they get to him?
Well, they realize they have to use stealth. They need to catch him outside the city walls, in the dark, entirely isolated from those 2 million people.
Ah, okay.
Which is exactly why the narrative suddenly shifts away from the loud, dangerous center of Jerusalem to a quiet, unassuming dinner in the neighboring village of Bethany.
We zoom in from this macro-political crisis to the house of a man known as Simon the leper.
Right.
And it's here that the first ordinary object takes center stage. They're having a meal, and an unnamed woman, who other historical accounts identify as Mary, walks in carrying an alabaster jar of ointment.
Yes.
The text calls it pure nard. What actually is that? Because it doesn't sound like something you just pick up at the local market for a couple of coins.
Yeah. No, not at all. So spikenard, or pure nard, was an incredibly exotic essential oil. It was extracted from a plant native to the Himalayan mountains in India and Nepal.
Oh, wow. So it's a huge import.
Right. In the first century Middle East, this was a luxury import of the highest order. And the alabaster flask itself was also expensive. It was designed with a long, thin neck that had to be physically broken to release the oil.
To make sure it wasn't tampered with.
Exactly, ensuring it couldn't be diluted or faked.
Well, the sources mentioned the street value of this single jar was 300 denarii. I have no idea what the exchange rate on a first century denarius is, but I'm guessing it wasn't cheap.
Not at all. A single denarius was the standard daily wage for a common laborer.
Oh, wow.
So 300 denarii represents an entire year's salary compacted into one small jar.
A full year's wages?
Oh.
That is staggering.
It is. In that culture, an item of this magnitude wasn't used as everyday perfume. It was essentially an investment portfolio.
Like a savings account.
Yeah, families would keep something like this tucked away in the bottom drawer, specifically saved as the ultimate security blanket to ensure they could properly anoint their own body for a culturally honorable funeral.
And she brings this in, shatters the neck of the jar, meaning this is entirely irreversible, it can never be resealed, and pours the entire year's salary over Jesus.
Yep.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Sure.
Think about watching someone cash out their entire retirement fund or take a priceless, irreplaceable family heirloom and just set it on fire for a single, fleeting gesture. When you look at it from a strictly pragmatic economic standpoint, wasn't Judas kind of right to speak up and call this a massive waste?
Well, the disciples do argue this could have been sold to feed the poor.
Right.
It is the ultimate pragmatic argument, and frankly, it sounds incredibly reasonable to modern ears. But what's fascinating here is how Jesus completely shuts down that practical objection.
He does, yeah.
He vehemently defends her. He calls what she did a bonny act, a lovely, beautifully fitting thing. He points out her incredible, deep discernment, recognizing something that all the men in the room were completely blind to.
What was she discerning that the inner circle was missing? I mean, they've been traveling with him for years at this point.
She understood that Jesus was actually going to die.
Oh.
He had predicted it multiple times, but the disciples were stuck on the idea of a triumphant political Messiah. She listened and she believed him.
Wow.
Furthermore, she understood he was going to die a criminal's death. In the Roman Empire, if you were executed as a state criminal on a cross, your family wasn't allowed to claim your body for proper burial.
Wait, really?
Yeah, your body would simply be thrown into the valley of Gehenna, the smoldering rubbish heap outside the city walls.
So she realized he wasn't going to get a funeral at all.
Precisely. She recognized this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Once he was arrested, there would be no chance to honor him. So she sacrificed her own funeral preparation to prepare him for his.
Wow. She gives absolutely everything she has of value, her entire safety net, just to honor him.
Yeah.
But the sources don't let us linger on that beauty. They immediately draw this chilling contrast. We flip from a woman giving up a year's wages to worship him to one of his closest friends deciding to sell him out.
It is a severe narrative whiplash. I mean, Judas leaves that dinner and goes directly to the chief priest to negotiate a price to hand Jesus over.
Right.
It seems Judas finally realizes that Jesus is actually heading toward death, not toward a wealthy earthly kingdom where the disciples would hold positions of power.
Ah, so he's cutting his losses.
Yeah, Judas decides to cash out his chips while he still has leverage.
Is there any historical significance to the specific amount Judas negotiated?
Very much so. He sold out his teacher for 30 pieces of silver. According to ancient Near Eastern law, specifically found in the book of Exodus, 30 pieces of silver was the standard restitution price paid to an owner if their slave was accidentally killed.
That is just sickening. He traded the man he had followed for years for the literal price of a slave.
Yes.
In the first century, owning a slave was basically a social status symbol.
Yeah.
It would be like someone today betraying their closest friend to a violent cartel just so they could afford to put a swimming pool in their backyard to climb up the neighborhood social ladder.
That's a brutal analogy, but it's accurate.
Yeah.
It reveals a profound psychological and spiritual reality. Mere proximity to greatness, or in this case, divinity, doesn't equal surrender to it.
Right.
Judas was in the absolute inner circle. He witnessed the miracles firsthand, he heard the teachings, he shared intimate meals, but he maintained a divided heart.
Yeah.
When the reality of Jesus' mission no longer served his personal ambitions, his true treasure money and status took the wheel.
So now we have an active mole. Judas is actively looking for a quiet moment in the dark to lead the temple guards to Jesus.
Right.
This means Jesus has to employ some serious covert tactics. We move from a tense dinner party to what feels like a first-century spy movie.
Jesus knows the betrayal is in motion, but he also knows he desperately needs one last uninterrupted night with his disciples to establish a massive theological shift.
He has to control the timeline of his own arrest,
Exactly.
which leads to these bizarre instructions
Yeah.
he gives to Peter and John. He tells them to go into the city to prepare for the Passover meal, and a man carrying a jar of water will meet them, and they're supposed to follow him to a secret house.
Yep.
To modern ears, that just sounds like standard directions.
Yeah.
But in the ancient world, this is a glaringly odd signal, isn't it?
Ugh, it would stick out like a sore thumb. Carrying water from the local well was strictly considered women's work in that culture.
Okay.
Men would carry water in animal skins, never in ceramic jars. So a man carrying a water pitcher would be immediately noticeable to anyone looking for it, but easily ignored by the bustling crowds.
It's like telling someone, hey, go to downtown Manhattan and look for a man walking down the street carrying a frilly floral women's umbrella.
Exactly, yeah.
Why go through all this intense cloak and dagger just to have dinner?
Because Jesus was deliberately playing for time. If Jesus had simply announced to the group, hey, we are having the Passover meal at 123 Main Street tonight,
Judas would know.
Judas would have immediately known the location. He could have slipped away, gone straight to the chief priests, and brought the armed guards to arrest Jesus right in the middle of the meal.
Right.
By orchestrating this highly specific, secret signal, Jesus ensured that Judas couldn't preemptively betray the location. He secured that room so he could establish the new covenant.
Okay, so the spy tactics work. They get to the upper room safely. They're eating the Passover meal. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Jesus drops an absolute bombshell onto the table. He says out loud that one of the men currently eating with him is going to betray him.
And notice the reaction of the disciples. Prior to this, Jesus had predicted his own suffering and death multiple times, and the disciples usually reacted with confusion or denial.
Right.
But the moment he suggests that one of them is the catalyst, they are instantly devastated.
The sources highlight something fascinating about their psychology in that moment. They don't immediately start pointing fingers at each other.
No, they don't.
They don't say, oh, it's definitely Thomas, or I knew Judas was acting shady. Instead, one by one, they start asking, is it I?
Yeah.
Our source material uses a brilliant analogy to explain this. Imagine an angry headmaster walking into a school assembly. His face is red. He is clearly furious. And he looks out at the students and says, some boy in this room did something terribly wrong.
Oh, wow.
Instantly, every single kid in that room freezes. They start mentally reviewing everything they've done wrong in the last 2 weeks, asking themselves, is it me? Did he find out about the window?
It's an incredibly vulnerable human reaction. I mean, every single disciple sitting at that table was intimately aware of their own flaws.
Right.
They knew their own intrusive thoughts. They knew they were entirely capable of failing. Even with Judas sitting right there accepting the food with a heart already turned to stone, the other 11 men are terrified of their own capacity for betrayal.
And it's in the middle of this heavy, paranoid, heart-searching atmosphere that Jesus institutes what we now call the Lord's Supper. The new covenant.
And we need to understand what a covenant actually was in the ancient world. It wasn't just a legal contract that you could break and pay a penalty for.
Right, it's more serious.
A covenant was a binding life or death treaty, often between a king and his subjects, and it was always sealed with blood, usually a massive animal sacrifice, to signify that breaking the treaty meant death.
But Jesus doesn't sacrifice an animal here. He just uses the ordinary items already on the table.
Yes, and that is the radical shift. They're gathered for the Jewish Passover, which for over 1,000 years had involved eating a sacrificed lamb to remember their physical exodus from Egypt.
Yeah.
But Jesus takes the bread and the wine, and he reassigns their meaning entirely. He says, this bread is my body, this wine is my blood of the covenant. He is replacing the Passover lamb with himself.
And he doesn't just bless the food and leave it at that. He gives a very specific command that changes the relationship entirely.
He commands them to take it. He doesn't just eat and drink it himself as a demonstration. He physically gives it to them to internalize.
Wow.
He is pointing to a completely new exodus. This isn't a physical liberation from a geographic location like Egypt. This is a spiritual exodus from the tyranny of sin itself.
Right.
And the only way to participate in that liberation is to take his impending sacrifice into yourself.
The intimacy of that is just profound. But tragically, that intimate connection shatters almost immediately.
It does.
After the meal, they sing a hymn and head out of the city to an olive grove on the Mount of Olives. And on the way, Jesus flat out tells them, every single one of you is going to abandon me tonight.
Yeah.
And of course, the disciples, led by Peter, vehemently deny this. Peter basically throws the rest of the group under the bus, boasting, even if all these other guys run away, I never will, I'll die with you.
The arrogance of human willpower is stunning there, especially considering what unfolds over the next few hours.
Seriously.
They move from the warm safety of the upper room into the cold darkness of the Garden of Gethsemane.
Wait, I just realized something. This entire overarching narrative of humanity started in a garden, didn't it? The Garden of Eden.
Yes, exactly.
And now at the climax of the story, we are right back in a garden.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the theological symmetry is breathtaking. It is essentially the battle of two gardens.
Oh, that's interesting.
Think about Eden. That was a garden of perfect comfort, but it became a garden of disobedience. The first man essentially looked at God and said, "My will be done," bringing sin and fracture into the world.
Right.
Now, look at Gethsemane. The name literally translates to olive press. It is a garden of crushing pressure and agony. Yet, this is the garden of obedience where Jesus looks at God the Father and says, "Thy will be done."
But the human element in this garden completely falls apart.
Yeah.
Jesus asks his inner circle to stay awake, to just be his lines of defense and support while he prays, and they literally just fall asleep. Repeatedly.
They really do.
They made these massive, bold, life or death promises just an hour ago, and now they can't even keep their eyes open.
The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. It is the ultimate historical proof that human willpower and good intentions are completely insufficient for the spiritual crisis they are facing.
Well, while they are sleeping, the sources describe Jesus experiencing an agony so intense he is sweating drops of blood.
Yeah.
He is falling on his face, begging for this cup to pass from him. This always confused me, actually.
Oh, so.
Throughout history, we've seen accounts of martyrs facing horrific, painful deaths with total calm. Some of them went to the flames singing hymns. Why is Jesus, the Son of God, shrinking back? Why is he seemingly so terrified of dying?
That is the crucial question to unlock this entire text. Jesus is not shrinking from physical death or the pain of crucifixion.
He's not.
No, he is shrinking from the cup. You have to look at the metaphorical use of that word in the ancient scriptures. Out of the 20 times the word cup is used metaphorically in the biblical text, 17 of those times it refers specifically to the unadulterated wrath and judgment of God against human rebellion and sin.
So he isn't afraid of the Roman soldiers or the nails.
Not at all. He is recoiling from the spiritual reality of what he has agreed to do. For the first time in all of eternity, Jesus is going to be separated from God the Father.
Oh, wow.
He is going to bear the full crushing weight of all human failure, sin, and malice, and face total divine abandonment, being entirely cut off from the presence of God. That is the literal theological definition of hell.
So he's facing hell.
He is about to walk into hell. That is why he cries out Abba, which translates to an incredibly intimate, childlike dad. He is facing the violent rupture of the most profound, eternal relationship in existence.
The psychological weight of that is staggering. Our sources shared an anecdote that really drives this failure of the disciples home.
Oh, the Good Friday service?
Yeah, a minister once decided to hold a Good Friday service that consisted entirely of 1 hour of total, unbroken silence. Just sitting in the dark church, quiet. Afterward, a woman came up to him and complained. She said she didn't get anything out of the service because she couldn't stop obsessing over that one specific verse where Jesus asked Peter, "Could you not watch with me 1 hour?"
And the minister's response was brilliant. He told her she got absolutely everything she needed out of that service.
Because it forces you to sit with the uncomfortable reality of human failure. The disciples couldn't sit in the silence and the darkness for 1 hour to support their friend.
Right.
They didn't prepare themselves spiritually. And because they failed in the quiet of the garden, they completely shatter when the physical threat finally arrives.
The time for preparation is over. Judas arrives, and he's not sneaking around anymore. He brings a massive armed mob equipped with swords and clubs provided by the religious leaders.
The signal Judas uses to identify Jesus in the dark is just steeped in tragic irony. He could have just pointed from a distance.
Yeah.
He could have shouted, "That's the guy." But he walks right up and kisses him. He takes the deepest, most universal token of human affection and friendship, and he weaponizes it.
It demonstrates how incredibly warped a human heart can become when it's consumed by greed and self-preservation.
It really does.
But pay close attention to Jesus in this chaotic moment. He is entirely in control of the narrative. Even as he is being surrounded by a heavily armed mob, he rebukes them.
Oh, right.
He calls out their cowardice. He says, "Have you come out against a violent robber with swords and clubs? I was with you every single day in the temple teaching, and you didn't lay a hand on me."
Yeah, he exposes the fact that they're operating in the dark because they are terrified of the truth coming to light.
Exactly.
The shepherd stands tall, completely composed. But the sheep, they scatter. One of the disciples who we know from other accounts is Peter panics. He draws a sword and wildly swings it, cutting off the ear of the high priest's slave.
Which perfectly illustrates the utter futility of human effort in this divine moment.
Yeah.
Peter tries to use human strength, political violence, and aggression to defend God's purposes, and it fails completely.
Jesus actually has to stop him and heal the man.
Yes. Human strength and violence cannot accomplish the spiritual liberation that needs to happen here.
And when human strength fails, Raw self-preservation takes over. The ultimate failure arrives. Every single disciple, the men who swore they would die with him just hours earlier, they all turn and run for their lives into the trees.
They do.
The text makes a pointed effort to say they all forsook him and fled.
And right in the middle of this tragic scattering, the text gives us a bizarre, almost comical, yet deeply poignant detail.
Yeah, right.
Amidst the chaos of the fleeing disciples, a young man is mentioned.
Yes, a Roman soldier grabs this young guy by his linen sheet, and the guy literally slips out of the clothing and runs away stark naked into the cold night.
Yeah.
It seems like such an incredibly random, embarrassing thing to include in a sacred, world-altering text. Why is that specific detail there?
Historically, biblical scholars widely believe this young man was John Mark, the actual author of this gospel.
No way.
Yeah. The early church often met in his family's large home in Jerusalem, which was very likely the location of the upper room where the Last Supper was held.
Oh, that makes sense.
The historical theory is that he woke up in the night, realized the disciples were leaving for the garden, quickly threw a linen bedsheet over himself, and secretly followed them.
So it's almost like an ancient Hitchcock cameo. He's writing himself into the background of his own movie?
In a way, yes, but the motivation is much more profound than a simple cameo. It is his personal signature on the text, but it's a signature of deep confession.
How so?
By including this highly embarrassing personal detail, John Mark is quietly telling the reader, I was there, I saw his agony, I saw the arrest, and when the real pressure hit, I failed too.
Wow.
I didn't stand by him. I ran away naked and terrified in the dark. He is intentionally including himself in the overarching theme of human failure.
So what does this all mean? We've looked in a shattered perfume jar, the negotiated price of a sleighs, secret water pitchers, sleeping friends in an olive press, and a naked runaway.
It's quite the list.
It is. When you step back and look at the entirety of Mark chapter 14, the core message clearly isn't about providing a list of heroic humans for us to emulate. It's doing the exact opposite. Right. It's holding up a mirror to our own deep unreliability. It is a story about a relentlessly faithful Savior who is completely surrounded by failing people.
Exactly.
11 promise absolute loyalty, 1 actively betrays him for cash, all of them fall asleep when he needs them most, and all of them flee when the swords come out. And yet, knowing all of this, Jesus goes to the cross anyway.
There's a story from our sources about the famous singer Dame Clara.
Oh, I read this.
Yeah, she was touring internationally and found herself performing in India, singing to a massive crowd in an open-air venue. She finished her set by singing the old, haunting spiritual, Were You There When They Crucified My Lord?
Such a powerful song.
It is. When she finished the final note, the massive crowd fell into a deep, heavy hush. And then a single voice from the back of the crowd shouted out, Yes, we were all there.
We were all there.
That is exactly what this text is doing. It asks you to look into this history and see yourself. Are you the calculating Judas, valuing your own social status and comfort over surrender? Are you the arrogant Peter, wildly overestimating your own strength and relying on your own sword?
Yeah.
Are you the sleeping disciples, well-meaning but spiritually exhausted and easily distracted? Or are you the fleeing crowd running away when faith becomes dangerous?
It's a heavy reality to sit with. But I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder that builds on exactly this point, because the story doesn't end in that garden.
No, it doesn't.
Think about those specific disciples, the guys who couldn't stay awake for 1 hour, the guys who drew swords in a panic and then ran away terrified into the night, abandoning their best friend in his darkest, most agonizing hour.
Yeah.
Those exact same failing, fearful people are the ones who later built a movement that completely redefined the Roman Empire and changed the entire world.
It's incredible.
It really is. It makes you wonder if the ultimate foundation of this historical narrative isn't human perfection, but rather a profound grace that absorbs and forgives our deepest, most embarrassing failures. How might that redefine the way you look at your own moments of weakness today?